Okay, welcome back from lunch, everyone. Nice to see you guys. Hopefully you're nice and full, right? Everybody have some good food? Okay, I know I did. So we're going to start off our afternoon with doing some loving kindness meditation. So I'm going to ease into the meditation with some chanting. Then we'll do breathing mindfulness meditation, where I'll guide you in that, and then there'll be a little bit of a period of time where it'll be quiet. Then I'll come in with the guidance on loving kindness. Then we'll go back to breathing mindfulness and back to the chanting. And then after the meditation, that's where I'm going to start this topic of cultivating healthy mental states, loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. This is going to help you to understand certain symptoms you're seeing in your mind, and then the antidote or the remedy of how to fix that. So you can take whatever position you like. There's seated, lying, standing. Those are the ones that we do with loving kindness meditation. And then, of course, there's walking meditation for breathing mindfulness as well. So I'll start with the chanting, which you guys are welcome to join in on if you like, and then I'll come back in with the guidance. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Bhutang Bhagavanhang Apivateyami Savakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Bhagavato Sāvaka Saṅkho Saṅghang Namami Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso Bhagava Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sammuno Sakhato Rokavitu Anuttaro Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatawa Manusanang Bhutto Bhagavati. Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath. A nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then, whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind focused on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. Then I'll be back with more guidance on loving kindness meditation. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. Continuing to breathe in through the nose and out through the nose. Repeat these affirmations in the mind on the out breath. May I be peaceful. May I be safe. May I be well. May I be free of all discontentedness in the suffering that it causes. May mom and dad be peaceful. May they be safe. May they be well. May they be free of all discontentedness in the suffering it causes. May my family, friends, co-workers, and neighbors all be peaceful. May they be safe. May they be well. May they be free of all discontentedness in the suffering that it causes. May all those who have caused me harm be peaceful. May they be safe. May they be well. May they be free of all discontentedness in the suffering that it causes. May all those who I have harmed be peaceful. May they be safe. May they be well. May they be free of all discontentedness in the suffering that it causes. May all beings, wherever they reside, be peaceful. May all beings be safe. May all beings be well. May all beings be free of discontentedness and the suffering that it causes. Now return back to breathing mindfulness meditation, focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. Breathing in and out. อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมะคะวะโหตังมะคะวันหังอภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตมะคะวะตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนภะคะวะโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสภะคะวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมุโนสัคขะโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาธัมมาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังพุทโธภะคะวะติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Okay. So as I mentioned this morning about this meditation, you can customize this however you like. You see I'm using the same affirmations each time, but if you have someone named Bob in your life that you just really have anger towards, you have frustration towards, you're probably going to say, may Bob be peaceful, right? When you're doing this on your own, right? Or maybe Susie or Rebecca or whatever it is, right? You need to be able to know that for yourself. You can do an individual. You can do groups of individuals. Like say you have hatred towards police officers. You can say, may all police officers be peaceful. Right? So you're going to need to extinguish that. So it could be a group of people or an individual or an organization. Maybe there was a company in the past that laid you off and you're still resentful about that, right? You're going to need to clean that up in your mind, right? So if this company that maybe you feel a little bit of resentment towards, you might have to include them in your loving kindness meditation a bit and free your mind of that. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to teach you guys these 4 healthy mental states. You've already been learning about one of them, which is loving kindness. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to explain to you what each one of these mental states are. I'm going to explain to you what they remedy by arising this in the mind, what they actually remedy. And I'm going to explain to you how to cultivate each individual mental state. So as we go, just like always, you guys are welcome to ask questions. Here at the temple, you guys can use the mics. And those of you guys at home, you can put your questions into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. Okay, so this first one, loving kindness, you guys learned about this morning. This is active goodwill towards all beings without judgment, a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. This is where you're not judging others to determine if they deserve your loving kindness or not. You're just practicing goodwill and an interest in seeing them be well regardless. Okay, so you guys already know this when we talked about it fairly well. And what it remedies is it remedies the anger, hatred, ill will, and all those lesser versions, like the irritation, the annoyance, even the dislike. If there's the slightest dislike in your mind towards other beings, you need to eradicate that from the mind. That by the time your mind gets to enlightenment, you won't even have the slightest dislike, right? The only reason why you dislike people is because they're not meeting your expectations. There's certain things you want from them. You want them to speak a certain way. You want them to look a certain way. You want them to be a certain way. And they're not that way, so you dislike them, right? So when you get rid of your craving, desire, attachment, that's going to help get rid of a lot of your anger. But you're going to also have to go in and specifically eliminate your anger. Okay, and all those lesser versions. The way that you cultivate this is through loving kindness meditation, which is what we just did and you guys learned about this morning. But then you need to practice this in daily life where you're going out into the world and be loving and kind through your intentions, your speech, and your actions. It's one thing to do this in meditation and cultivate it there, but you need to go out into the world and interact with people in loving and kind ways. That's how you're going to eliminate this. So whenever you see with your right mindfulness, whenever you see anger, hatred, ill will, irritation, annoyance, dislike, frustration, resentment, any of those kinds of aspects of the mind arising, you would like to apply right effort to cut that off and let it go and eliminate it out of the mind and bring into the mind the loving kindness. Because if you remember back to right effort, you're applying effort to eliminate the unwholesome and you're applying effort to arise the wholesome. So you're doing both of those actions, right? You're applying right effort to eliminate the anger, hatred, ill will, and all those lesser versions. That's a cutting it off and eliminating it from the mind. Don't allow the mind to stay wired that way. You're cutting it off, but then you're arising this loving kindness, this genuine interest in seeing them be well. So if you notice some hatred coming into the mind, like let's use example from Chris this morning. If you're standing in line at 7-Eleven and you're noticing you're starting to get frustrated with the person in the front, that you feel like they're taking too long to put away their money and move on from the cashier, right away you like to cut off that frustration and arise this genuine interest in seeing them be well. You know, if they need an extra little bit of time to put away their money, so be it. May they be well, right? You like to get rid of that anger and frustration and arise this genuine interest in seeing them be well. That's what's going to eliminate this. Then there's compassion. What compassion is the concern for the misfortune of others. The opposite of compassion would be where the mind is indifferent. If you're indifferent and you could care less about what other people experience, this is the opposite of compassion. But when you're not practicing compassion, your mind can be on that side of indifference, but it can also be on the other side too. This is a little bit about maybe what you were talking about, where your mind was maybe worrying about the person who's crossing the street with the phone, perhaps. I don't know, you didn't mention that, but that could have been something that was in there, where the mind oftentimes has worry or anxiety about the world. Like maybe you see a war breaks out and you get very worried or you have anxiety. Or maybe you hear about the people who went through the hurricane in the USA, maybe in Florida. You hear about their houses getting destroyed and not having food, and there's floodwaters and all these kinds of things. Maybe you're worried about that. That's because the mind's on two opposite sides. The mind's either holding on and wanting the world to be a certain way, and it's not that way, so the mind's worried or having anxiety, or the mind's all the way on the other side where it's indifferent and it could care less what happens to other people. And you're not going to be peaceful and content on either sides of this. So the Buddha is teaching you to come to the middle with this compassion, where you have concern for the misfortune of others. You're concerned about them, but you're not worried, right? A mind that sees all the problems in the world will be worried. But a mind that sees the problems and understands the solutions, you can just have concern, right? The solution for all the problems in the world is people need to train their mind. As long as people operate with craving, anger, and ignorance in their mind, yeah, there's going to be wars. Yeah, there's going to be rapes, there's going to be murders, there's going to be poverty and famine and all these other things. That's from human decisions that are being made that's causing all those things, right? So when we all train our minds and we get rid of craving, anger, and ignorance, this is where more and more the world will become like heaven on earth, essentially. If we had an entire species of enlightened beings, this would be heaven on earth, because nobody would be harming each other. Nobody would be doing harmful things. We would just all be loving and kind and warm and gentle and polite and friendly with each other and respectful to each other. That's what it would be like if everybody was enlightened, right? So that's not the world we live in right now. So when you see people doing things that are harmful, if you're worried or you have anxiety about that, that's because your mind's on one side. You're having craving, wanting the world to be a certain way. But if you could care less about what's happening to people, that's the other side. That's the indifference. So the middle way is you have concern. It's like, oh, it's really unfortunate that that war is going on, but there's nothing you can do to stop it, because you didn't cause the war, so you can't stop it. There's nothing you can do to stop it, right? It's somebody's mind. There's two leaders who their minds are having conflict. They're having problems. They're having craving, anger, and ignorance. And we can't interject in that. And we can't stop it because we're not the ones who's causing it. So if our mind is just worried and having anxiety, then that's the mind living with craving, desire, attachment. But you can come to the middle where there's concern for the misfortune of others. So the way that you cultivate this is that whenever you see the indifference, or whenever you see the worry and anxiety about the world, with your mindfulness, your awareness of mind, you cut that off and let it go. You don't allow the mind to dwell in that indifference or in the worry and the anxiety. You cut it off and let it go, and you come to the middle where you have concern, where it's like, oh, it's unfortunate that this is occurring. And if you would like to do something to help people, surely you help people, right? That's what we do. That's what you're going to hear me talk about at the end when we talk about generosity. So it's not that you just could care less about what's going on in the world. Sometimes people think that that's what it means to have non-attachment. Caring less about what happens, that's the indifference, right? But the other side of that is the worry and the anxiety. This middle way, it's like you have care, you have concern, you're generally concerned, but you just look at it and say, what can I do to help here, if possible? And you may or may not actually be able to help in any given situation. So you're not going to be able to help in every single situation for every single problem. So whenever you see the worry and anxiety, or you see the indifference, you would like to catch that as a bodily sensation, cut it off and let it go, and then apply right effort to get it out of the mind. And then apply the right effort to arise this compassion, concern for the misfortune of others, right? So there's times where I'm walking down the street and I might see a homeless person, right? And I might see this person and I might stop and I might go into a store and get some water and some food and things like that. And I might give that to that person. And that's what you're going to hear me talk about with generosity. And then there's times where I'm walking down the street maybe and I see a homeless person and I can't do anything. I don't have money myself. Maybe I'm on my way to pick up my son at school, and maybe I'm even late to picking him up. So I need to go show loving kindness and compassion to him. I don't have time to do that in this situation. So in every situation, you're not going to be able to practice generosity. But what compassion isn't the action. It's not what you're actually doing. It's a mental quality. So you're going to hear me talk about generosity at the end, where you actually take action to help people. But here, what I'm talking about with loving kindness and compassion is these are mental qualities that you're cultivating. It's not the actual action. Whether you choose to put any action behind it is up to you. When I walk past that homeless person that I'm not actually helping, I still have compassion for them. I still have concern for their misfortune. I'm just choosing for some reason to not help them in that situation. I'm not able to help them, but I still have compassion for them. It's unfortunate that this person is in this situation, but I also know that whatever situation they're in, there were certain decisions that they made that led to that. And there are certain decisions that they have to make in order to get out of that, right? It's not me that's going to be able to get them out of homelessness. They have to make those decisions for themselves. So the compassion that I'm talking about and the loving kindness here is it's a mental state. It's not saying that you're going to do any particular action at any given time. It's just the mental state that you're cultivating in order to eliminate these unwholesome qualities in the mind. So do you guys have any questions on this? Let me see what we have online, if anything. Let's see. Okay, not seeing any questions online or here. Okay. All right, so now we'll go to the next two. The next one is sympathetic joy. What sympathetic joy is where you have joy for others' success, even if you didn't contribute to it. This is the opposite of jealousy or envy. So, for example, if somebody says, hey, I just got a raise at work and I got a promotion. If you experience jealousy or envy because of that, that's because your sympathetic joy isn't fully developed yet. But if you're like, hey, congratulations, that's wonderful for you, or whatever you end up saying, that's coming from your sympathetic joy, that you have joy for this person's success, even though you didn't contribute to it. If they're like, hey, I'm going to Australia for a vacation, you're like, oh, that's wonderful, have a great time, or whatever it is that you might say, that's your sympathetic joy. You have joy for their success. But if you notice any jealousy or envy, that's because the mind hasn't cultivated this yet, right? So this is like a tool. This is like a prescription in your tool belt, that wherever you see jealousy and envy arising in your mind, you know it's because you don't have sympathetic joy fully developed yet. So you would like to bring that in more and more and more as you see the jealousy and envy. So it's the same thing like with the other ones, that with your mindfulness, whenever you see jealousy or whenever you see envy, you cut it off and let it go. There's going to be bodily sensations associated with it. So if you can see it as a bodily sensation and say, nope, not going to let you have that jealousy or envy, that would be ideal, because otherwise your mind's going to stay wired that way. But if you can cut it off and let it go, that's wonderful. And then arise the sympathetic joy. You might be in some situations where you know intellectually you're supposed to have sympathetic joy, but you don't quite feel it inside. You don't quite have that mental quality yet. Maybe you and your coworker applied for a promotion at work, and your coworker comes by your desk and says, hey, by the way, I got that promotion, right? And inside you feel jealous and you feel envious, but you're just like, congratulations, I'm pleased for you. Right? So if that's where you're at right now, then okay, just do that. But more and more, you would like to break through that and just get to the point where, oh, congratulations, I'm really pleased for you. That's wonderful, right? Even though you know that you didn't get it, at least they got it, right? And now you can feel sympathetic joy for them. So in some cases, you're not going to feel the sympathetic joy, and that's the whole problem, right? And what you're trying to do is break through that wall. So if you can just put together a couple of words, or maybe just a smile, and like, congratulations, or whatever it is, okay, just do that. You're not going to have it permeating in the mind. If you notice that you have jealousy, it's not going to be permeating right away. It's not a magical pill or a potion or a button that you can press. So you've got to apply right effort to bring it up and arise it in the mind, especially in those situations where you're feeling the jealousy and you're feeling the envy. You're going to have to really push through that, get that jealousy and envy out of the mind, and bring forth the sympathetic joy. That's what's going to help you in these situations. Then this next one is equanimity. Equanimity has two sides to it. So I'm going to talk to you about the two different aspects of it. The first aspect is this mental calmness, composure, evenness of temper, especially in difficult situations. So especially in difficult situations, your mind can remain calm and composed. I'll give you an example. Say you get a phone call that your mom has been in a terrible car accident and she's being rushed to the hospital and she's in the back of an ambulance. Well, if you didn't have equanimity, you might grab your car keys, run out the door, jump in your car, and bolt across town to get to the hospital. Well, in this situation, you're actually causing a lot of difficulties for yourself, because you could easily get in a car accident yourself. Or at the very least, you're going to show up to the hospital with your mind all shaken up, and now you can't talk to the doctors and nurses to be able to make wise decisions to help her, because you can't comprehend what they're saying because your mind's all upset and you're all frustrated, you're all shaken up. So what the Buddha is teaching you to do is maintain your calmness and composure. The more you get rid of your cravings, desires, attachments, that's what's going to help you to maintain your calmness and composure. Because if you're attached to your mom and you want her to be permanently healthy, when she's unhealthy, you'll be shaken up. It's not your love that's causing that mind to be shaken up. It's the mind craving for mom to be permanently healthy. So if you get that phone call and mom's in the back of an ambulance, you got to remind yourself, she's in the best place she could be. She's got emergency medical technicians in the back of that ambulance. She's about to show up to a hospital with all kinds of equipment and professionals that can help her. That's the best place she can be. let me just calmly make my way to the hospital so that when I show up, I can hear what's going on, and then I can make some wise decisions to help her. You'll know that if you have equanimity, the last thing you're interested in doing is rushing across town, right? So you're going to need to stay calm and composed in all situations. So you're going to need to apply right effort, because if you get that phone call and you feel the mind start to get all bent out of shape, you got to apply right effort to cut that off and be like, no. Calmness, composure. Right? That's what you're going to have to do. You're going to have to eliminate with right effort. You're going to have to eliminate that unwholesome quality and then arise the wholesome quality of equanimity. Okay? So this is the first part, that it eliminates restlessness, worry, anxiety, and an overactive mind. But then there's another part to equanimity. This other part to equanimity is treating everybody fairly and equally. If you're doing things with a group of people, you would like to treat everybody equally. Let's just say you're an employer and you have, say 5 employees working with you. If you're going to bring in, say, a milkshake for employee 1, you would like to bring in a milkshake for 2, 3, 4, and 5 as well. If you just brought in a milkshake for employee 1, then 2, 3, 4, and 5 are probably going to get jealous because they have envy, right? They have craving, desire, attachment. Even though they're causing it themselves, they don't realize that. They're going to attribute that jealousy to you. And now when they experience that painful feeling, you're going to get some employees that are quitting. They're not going to want to be around you anymore. They're going to have aversion and they're going to push you away. So one of the things that the Buddha is doing is he's teaching your mind how to eliminate discontentedness, but he's also teaching you how to navigate a world of unenlightened beings. There's all these beings out there with craving, desire, attachment. They're causing their own painful feelings and they don't realize it, and they're going to attribute their painful feelings to you. So you would like to function in a way that is less likely to trigger one of their cravings, desires, attachments, so that now you can navigate the world with peace. Right? So if you're in a situation where you're bringing back a milkshake for an employee, bring one back for everybody. And if you can't, then just don't do it, right? Just leave it off. Like don't do that, right? So if you're giving people a Christmas bonus or a holiday bonus or a vacation or something like that, you would like to treat everybody fairly. And now people will feel good about this. One time I was at my son's school and I showed up at the front of his school. This was his old school. He doesn't go there anymore. And the principal came out and she said, "Hey, parents, I see that some of you guys have your ID badges on and some of you don't. I would like you to know that the school policy is that if you'd like to pick up your child, you need to have an ID badge." And she looks to me and she says, "I know who you are. You don't have to go to the office, but I don't know you and I don't know you. You're going to have to go to the office and get an ID badge." Right? And right away, everybody was like, whoa, like looking at this principal, like, whoa, what's going on? Where what I would have done if I was the principal, if I was trying to get everybody to wear their ID badge, I would just say everybody needs to go get their ID badge or go to the office. It's not like you're showing favorites to different people. This is very unwise. So in situations like that, it's not that you're bringing anybody a gift. It's even in a situation like this where you're trying to implement a policy, you would like to implement it equally and fairly for everybody. And that's what's going to produce the best benefits for you. And what it's going to do is it's going to help you eliminate any arrogance or ego, because what the mind does with its conceit, what ego is, even though we haven't talked about it in this class, is the mind's wanting to put itself above people or below people. This is coming from our animal existences. When we were animals, we had to have ego. We had to have conceit, because if we were a pack of lions or a pack of wolves, we needed to know who's the alpha male and who's the alpha female, because they're teaching us to hunt. They're teaching us how to survive. If we didn't know who the alpha male and alpha female was, we wouldn't learn how to be a wolf. Or if we were in a herd of elephants, we needed to know who's the matriarch of our herd, because she's the one who's showing us where to eat. She's showing us the migration paths. She's showing us the watering holes. If we didn't know who was above us, we wouldn't have survived as an elephant. But when we come into this human world, our mind is still conditioned this way with conceit. And now we try to look who's above us and who's below us. And we're constantly trying to figure that out. And now in a social situation, we can't feel comfortable uncomfortable because we're trying to always figure out who's above us and who's below us, right? So what you would like to do is practice equanimity, where everybody's equal, that you see yourself as equal, that you're not above anybody, you're not below anybody, everybody's equal. So, for example, in a place like Thailand, there's a king, there's a prime minister. Yeah, they're important, but you know what? The person who sweeps the street outside, they're important too, right? Because we like clean streets. Right? So we treat everybody equally. Their role is different in society, and other people might think that the king is here and the street sweeper is here, but that's not the way you should think. If you would like to get to enlightenment, you're going to need to eliminate your ego and your arrogance of putting people above and putting people below, and that starts with equanimity. And there's other things you're going to need to learn as well to get rid of your ego, but this is just one facet of it, is view yourself as being equal to everybody and view everybody else as being equal too, and treat everybody fairly and treat everybody equally. If you do something for one person, be sure if it's a group of people, you do that for everybody else too, right? You treat everybody equally. So like when my son has a friend over and we go out to get ice cream, if I'm going to buy my son ice cream, I'm going to buy his friend ice cream too, right? So you would like to treat everybody equally. Whereas if I just bought my son ice cream, this wouldn't be very nice, right? It wouldn't go over very well. So we'd like to treat everybody equally. And that's what this equanimity, the root word here is equal. So it's keeping your mind equal. It's keeping your mind equanimitous, but it's also treating other beings, treating everybody equal. And this will help you with your own ego and your own arrogance because you're starting to treat more and more people equally. So it's the same thing. It's with right mindfulness. Whenever you see your mind being restless or worried or having anxiety or overactivity, you cut that off and let it go. That's the unwholesome qualities that you're eliminating. And then you apply right effort to arise the equanimity, the calmness and composure. And then the same thing, whenever you see yourself wanting to treat people differently, now you cut that off and let that go and you bring in the equanimity. So I'll give you an example here. Like you guys know that I have all these clothes up here, right? I'm giving away all these clothes to students. So I just set them up here and I say, hey, everybody, you're welcome to come get some clothes, right? And if you come to get some, great. And if you don't come, fine. But at least I offered it to everybody, treating everybody equally. It's not like, hey, if you've been learning with me for more than a year, you can come get some clothes. But if you haven't been learning with me for up to a year, you can't have any clothes. This would be the opposite of what I'm teaching you here. You would like to treat everybody equal, right? And that's what's going to create the best relationships for you. Okay, so any questions on either of these two? Would you mind getting a microphone here? Yeah. And John, you have some questions too? Yeah, get a microphone. We have people that are joining us online, so they'll be able to hear you.
Oh, okay. So for those people who have too much sympathetic joy, so maybe they don't want to do those creative stuff by themselves. What can we do?
So each one of these mental states, you can practice them in excess, which isn't what you would like to do. And you can also practice them very little too, which is not what you'd like to do. You like to bring them all to the middle, where you can practice them in the middle way. And you'll know that you're in the middle with any of these mental qualities because the mind will be peaceful and it'll be joyful. But can you explain to me more, like with an example of what you're saying?
Like for me, myself, I think I do have a lot of sympathetic joy, which caused me to, I always congrats to others, but I don't want to do those things by myself. Because I think our world is already very awesome.
Yeah. So you see other people experiencing beneficial things and you're like, oh, congratulations for you. But you're not interested in doing those exact same things.
Yeah, because I don't think I have enough purpose to do that.
Yeah, and that's fine. Just because somebody else is saying, hey, I'm going on a trip to Australia, and you say, oh, congratulations, have a good time, that doesn't mean you have to go to Australia.
Then what's the meaning of why I still live here? Why I'm still alive?
Because this being is alive. That doesn't have anything to do with practicing sympathetic joy, though. If someone else is going to Australia, that doesn't mean you have to go to Australia. Right? You can be joyful for their success without you choosing to go do that same thing.
Yeah, but it makes me I don't have enough energy to push myself.
You don't have to push yourself. That would be living with craving, desire, attachment. If you're pushing yourself, if you're longing, yearning, and you're pushing, you're not going to get to peace and joy that way. You weren't here yesterday when I was teaching about craving, desire, attachment, or this morning. So you're coming in with a little bit of lack of understanding of what I've already taught, but there's this craving, this desire, this attachment, this longing, yearning. That's where you're feeling like you want to push yourself, and you can only be happy if things happen your way. But then if things don't happen your way, then you end up in this sadness and this frustration or this agitation. So as long as you're putting all this pressure on yourself and pushing yourself, you're going to get to the point where you feel depleted and you're going to feel empty and you're going to be angry and frustrated because you're not getting what you want.
Yeah, but I don't have any desire, which makes me, I don't know, I don't have purpose to make a living.
Yeah, so that's the other side, right? This is what the unenlightened mind sees. It usually sees two sides. It sees chase, or it sees all the way over here where I sit around and do nothing, and I could care less about what's happening in the world. But either of those two sides is not where you're going to get to peace. Where you're going to get to peace is in the middle, where you pursue things as a goal, as an objective, or an interest. And that's where you'll find the peace and the joy, because you would like to pursue things in life. But if you chase after it and you form your inner feelings based on whether you get it or not, that's where your mind will be conflicted.
But you think everything is meaningless.
That's the way you feel right now. But if you come to the middle where your mind is well trained, you won't have those types of thoughts and feelings. Yeah, right now you haven't learned certain things that you need to be able to learn, to be able to understand. But what you're experiencing now is the unenlightened state. Your mind is unenlightened. But what I'm teaching you to do is be able to come to the middle, but there's some foundational teachings that you haven't learned yet to be able to understand. But I've recorded all of these things. So if you'd like to go to our YouTube channel, you'll be able to access them and see and read books, and all of it's available at no cost for you.
I'm gonna do some research after course.
Sure. Afterwards, you can come let me know. I'll connect you up with our YouTube channel and our website and all that kind of stuff.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hello. So my question is your statement with equanimity. So for example, for a company, we have a lot of different partners, and we practice this principle of credible neutrality to ensure that everyone gets similar treatment and similar opportunities with our company. But what you end up creating is a cohort of people that some of them who are, below average tend to take advantage of your resources. And then at the same time, you're restraining the overperformers and not rewarding them and giving them more support. So I'm not sure how to practice this principle at work.
Can you give me more details, more specific, so I can help you? So,
for example, there's certain partners that they just don't contribute as much to your company, right? And then there's other partners that are contributing a lot and working to, for example, build with us every single day, giving a lot of feedback. But then if you treat everyone similarly, it's very it highlights bad examples for others where they're like, all I need to do is very minimal and I get treated similarly. And that creates a lot of, laziness and just taking advantage of the resources as opposed to rewarding the people who overperform.
Yeah. So what you would do in this kind of situation to treat everybody equally is hey, here's the program. If you would like to be in our tier 1 partners, here's the requirements for that. Tier 2 partner, here's the requirements for that. Tier 3 partner, here's the requirements for that. And you're treating everyone equally because everybody has the opportunity to be a tier 1 partner, but they're choosing not to, right? They're choosing not to contribute. So it's still equality because everybody has the opportunity to do it, but they're just choosing not to for whatever reason.
So really it's about bringing equal opportunities.
Yeah. Yeah, each partner has more than, like, you're not preferential. Like if partner A would like to be tier 1 and partner B would like to be tier 1, or partner C would like to be tier 1, you're completely fine with that. But as a business, you're modeling and saying, hey, if you would like to be a tier 1 partner, here's what we need in order for you to be able to be that. And anybody and everybody can do that. That's the equality.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
A question in regards to sympathetic joy and right speech. So say that someone I know is going to Australia, and it would be dishonest of me to say, oh man, that's so cool, I'm so happy for you. But I can say, oh, congratulations, that's so cool, I'm feeling super jealous. But hey, it's cool for you, man. Like, for me, that would be a better answer. Mm-hmm. Obviously, it might be harder with the coworker who I don't really like, and they get a promotion. Mm-hmm. But like, where do we draw the line with like the right speech thing there? Because I can see what you said about like the saying it somehow can make us feel it more. Like, congratulations, I'm happy for you, even if we don't, in a political situation with, say, a coworker. But it's technically not right speech. And also, a completely different question, but very quickly, how do you cut off a bodily sensation once you experience envy, jealousy, pride, or similar? Like, to my understanding, the best thing to do is to be aware of it, and to not reject it, but the cutting off part, I'm curious about, like, if you could talk more about that.
Sure. So what you say in a situation where you're experiencing jealousy is totally up to you. I don't suggest that you tell other people that you're feeling jealous, because there's nothing beneficial that's going to come from that, because they're not causing your jealousy. So there's nothing by you telling it to them that they're going to be able to fix it. You need to be able to manage those feelings and emotions yourself. So even though it's kind of like funny in some cultures to say, oh, you're going to Australia, I'm so jealous. In my opinion, this is unwise, because you're just kind of putting your garbage out on the street and expecting other people to deal with it. In reality, you can practice right speech. If you don't feel happy for them going to Australia, you shouldn't say it. That's not what I'm teaching. But you can say other things like, oh, congratulations, that will be really good for you, right? That's not talking about your feelings or anything like that. You can just say, oh, that's wonderful. That'll be great for you, or whatever it is that you say. You've got to decide in the moment, but you're never interested in lying. So the teachings of the Buddha, it's not about like this plug and play. Like, if somebody does this, you should do that. And if somebody does this, you should do that. It's not like a decision tree, because each situation is going to be different. There's going to be unique variables every single time. So you've got to, as you're moving to this higher consciousness, take in these variables, and with your wisdom, put together whatever you think would be appropriate in any given situation. Sometimes in some cultures, like in the USA, they have this thing where it's like, if somebody says, oh, I fought in World War II, oh, thank you for your service. Or I fought in Iraq, oh, thank you for your service. It's almost like these pre-canned stock answers with every single thing, or a lot of things. This is the most uncompassionate thing that I think. Like, that's very insincere to be able to do that. Instead, what you would like to do is think through, what would I say in any given situation? Now, if this person expects me to say thank you for your service, and I don't say it, and they get angry, have I caused that anger? So if someone has an expectation that I should say, thank you for your service, or here's a better one. Sometimes people say, oh, my grandfather just died last week. And usually what people say is, I'm sorry for your loss. Well, if I don't say that, and the person on the other side gets frustrated because I didn't say, I'm sorry for your loss, did I cause their frustration?
No, it's on them, but I think at the same time, they're in a vulnerable situation. So with our kindness, it's not, in that situation, it might not be so difficult to say, I'm sorry for your loss. Mm-hmm. Whereas if someone has worked for, say, an NGO or something, it might be difficult. In Iraq, it might be more difficult to say,
Yeah.
Thank you for your service.
So based on everything that you know about the teachings that I shared yesterday, is everybody going to say, I'm sorry for your loss? They're not, right? Because that would be permanence, right? So if somebody gets frustrated because I didn't say, I'm sorry for your loss, their mind's causing it themselves. It's not me that's causing that frustration, right? So it's important that in each situation that you're in, whether it's about sympathetic joy or anything else like this, you would like to look at the variables, look at the situation, and decide for yourself in that situation, what are you going to say? And what I tend to do in all these situations, and I'm not saying that you guys should necessarily do this, but if there's some norm, I usually don't conform to that. So when a student tells me, hey, my grandfather died last week, I don't say, I'm sorry for your loss, right? Because they didn't really lose anything. They gained something. They spent however many years with their grandfather and they had a great experience over that time. Instead, I might say, how are you feeling about that? Or is there something I can do to help you with that? I might say something like that instead of, oh, I'm sorry for your loss. Because right away you're amplifying that they've lost something, and that magnifies the pain in their feeling or in their mind, where in reality they haven't really lost something. They actually gained something, which is this wonderful life that they spent with their grandfather, right? So a lot of times these pre-canned stocked answers, which are the norm and kind of culturally acceptable, is really kind of an unwise way to speak. So you're going to need to look at each situation using your wisdom and decide in each situation how you should respond. So if somebody is going to Australia, you'll figure out at that time what you should or shouldn't say. I'm just giving some different examples, but you would like to use your own personality and your own thoughts to come up with what you would say in that situation. The other thing that you were talking about when the jealousy is arising and the bodily sensations, one of the big misunderstandings in this whole world of the path to enlightenment and things like this is people sometimes teach you to sit with the feelings, or observe the feelings, or look at the feelings, investigate the feelings, and all these other things. This isn't what the Buddha taught, and those kinds of things actually won't lead to enlightenment as long as you're doing those kinds of things. Because if you looked at the Four Noble Truths and you understand what's causing the feelings, which is the craving, desire, attachment, there's no amount of looking at the feelings, observing the feelings, experiencing the feelings that's actually going to help you to eliminate them. But because people aren't understanding the path and they aren't understanding what enlightenment is, sometimes people teach you to look at the feelings or observe the feelings or sit with the feelings. Instead, what the Buddha is teaching you to do is to rewire the mind so that the mind doesn't stay wired like this to keep experiencing the conditional feelings over and over and over again. So these bodily sensations that you experience, if you cut it off as a bodily sensation, you won't actually experience the conditional feeling. But if it's become a conditioned feeling, which was the example that you gave, that now the mind is actually jealous, the bodily sensations associated with that are long gone. Now it's actually a feeling. And you would like to cut it off there as well. Don't allow the mind to dwell in the feeling. If you can get better and better at cutting it off as a bodily sensation before it actually becomes a feeling, eventually you'll get to the point where all your cravings, desires, attachments are eliminated, where there won't be any arising of any discontentedness. So there won't be tightening in the chest, tightening in the throat, heat in the face, pressure in the skull for something like anger. None of that stuff will occur because there's no cravings there. So like, for example, if my son comes home with a good report card and he has good grades, it's like, sweet, you got some good grades, wonderful, outstanding, good job, you did a really good job there, that's wonderful. But if he comes home with grades that aren't so great, it's like, all right, well, it looks like you did really well in these classes, but it looks like this class or this class you really need help in. Let's talk about it. Let's figure out how to solve this. Because the anger doesn't help anything. So if I get angry in that situation, it's because I have a craving for my son to get good grades. But when you get rid of that craving, now you can just understand, like, hey, these good grades are impermanent, but these less than perfect grades, those are impermanent too. Whatever happened that he didn't get a wonderful grade, let's solve it. Let's talk about it. Let's figure out what it is and how we can solve it. The anger doesn't actually help anything. So if if an individual is observing their feelings, sitting with the feelings, looking at the feelings, talking about their feelings, they're not actually doing what they need in order to eliminate them, which is cut them off and let them go. Because if you allow that anger to come up in the mind, now when my son has that F on his report card, now the mind will be unskillful, and you might start yelling and hollering and complaining to your son, and now this damages your relationship. Rather than just get to the heart of the matter is, looks like you got an F here. What do we need to do to fix this? Let's take a look at it and let's discuss it. And now let me give you the support that you need to be able to resolve that. So that's why you would like to cut it off at the bodily sensation, because if you keep allowing the mind to dwell in those conditioned feelings, the mind's just going to keep doing that over and over and over again. Then it's going to become unskillful.
Just quickly, in this interpretation of the teachings, not focusing on the feelings, but on the previous stage, the bodily sensations. Mm-hmm. How do you see being aware of them and being equanimous to them, watching them as they arise and fade away?
You're not interested in watching the bodily sensations. You would actually like to notice them. That's what the mindfulness is. You notice the bodily sensations, and then right away you apply right effort and cut it off and let it go. Right now, you don't have that discipline of your mind. That's the Eightfold Path we talked about yesterday, to practice right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. But as you develop your practice more and more through meditation and outside of meditation, you get better and better at noticing the bodily sensations and then cutting it off and letting it go. But right now, you're not going to be able to do that from day one. It's going to take you time to build that up. Some students take as long as 6 months, a year, even a year and a half, 2 years, to be able to build up to the point where they can notice the bodily sensations and cut them off and let them go. But that's what you would like to do, not look at the bodily sensations, not observe them, not watch them arise, change, and fade away, but you'd actually like, as soon as you see them arising, you'd like to, boom, cut them off and let them go. And that's what's going to rewire the mind. Mm-hmm.
How do you cut them off? Like technically, like how exactly do you do it?
So it's internal in the mind. So the same thing that you're doing in the meditation, where when you're focused on the breath and the mind moves off the breath and you let that go, you cut that off and bring the mind back. That's building that quality of the mind to be able to notice the bodily sensations, because that's your mindfulness. And then you're building that quality to cut off and let go. So you're building that quality in your meditation and through your generosity, practicing the giving and sharing. But that's where I gave you the suggestion yesterday too, that because your mind isn't well disciplined to be able to internally cut off and let go, you might need to redirect your mind. So remember that example where I talked about watching the news and then you notice the frustration and you just turn off the news and get up and go for a walk and redirect the mind. You're going to need to do that several times to be able to get to the point where you can internally cut it off. Eventually, you'll be able to sit there and watch the news. You'll feel the frustration coming, and internally, you'll be able to cut it off and continue watching the news. But right now, you're not at that point. You're going to probably have to get up and walk out the door and go for a bike ride or a walk or something like that. And more, you'll build the quality to let go internally within the mind. Any more? Okay.
I have a follow-up to that, actually, because I was also curious about the cutting off, because before we got to that point where we practice so much meditation to be able to cut it off, are there any like tactical things like the ones you just said, redirect your mind, or what I try to try was like take a deep breath, things like that. Is there anything that you find helpful to help us at the start?
Yeah, that taking a deep breath is redirecting the mind, right? So instead of like continuing to look at the news, you close your eyes and you're focusing the mind on the breath, right? You're shutting down the contact, because it's the contact coming through the eyes that is triggering the craving in the mind, and now it's rising up. So when you close your eyes and you focus on the breath, you're redirecting the mind. Another way is to get up and go take a bike ride. It's the same thing. It's just a different way of doing it. We used to do this with my son. I was talking to you at lunch about how I trained my son even when he was an infant. So when he was 1 year old, 2 years old, even 6 months old, he would be sitting on the floor playing. And with children, you can see when they're about to get discontent because they wear it all over their face and they're like, getting ready to get discontent. And we would say, did you see that cloud outside? That is a beautiful cloud. Did you see it? Let's go over there and look. Right? And we would get his hand and we would like walk over to the window and it would completely snap him out of whatever he was about to get angry or frustrated or agitated about. So that by the time I started training him at 6 years old, his mind was pretty peaceful already because he had learned to cut off and cut off and cut off. He didn't have the wisdom at 6 months or 1 year old, but we did. So we were actually training him even when he was a little infant. So this is something that I've done with him as an infant, but you can do it with yourself too. You can just redirect your mind. So let's just say you're driving your car and someone cuts you off in traffic, and then boom, you get stuck at a stoplight. Instead of just sitting there and looking at that guy's tail lights as he's driving away, instead be like, oh wow, look at that lake over there. That's a beautiful lake. Wow, that's pretty nice. May you be well, brother. Take care. Wow, that's a really nice view. I like that mountain over there. Right? You can do these kinds of things to redirect your mind because you're not allowing it to stay wired with that frustration. So there's all these kind of tactics. Anything you can do will redirect the mind and send it somewhere else. And more as you do that, the mind doesn't stay wired like this. You rewire the mind where the mind just doesn't get angry anymore. It just doesn't have any arising because you've gotten rid of all your cravings.
Got it. That's very helpful. And the one thing only I was concerned about was this sometimes feel to me as escapism.
About what?
About my negative emotions. So to give an example.
I'm sorry, I'm not hearing you.
Like escapism.
Oh, escapism. Okay.
Right. So to give an example, the other day when I walked out of the classroom, I saw a text or like an emergent email that was supposed to give a lot of anxiety. But I chose to not look at it and just to get my peace back and walk back to my hotel and then look at the email.
Perfect.
All right, so I'm trying to practice that, but it feels like I'm just delaying all the things that I need to deal with. Well, I still feel a bit of anxiety when I look at it at a hotel. It's much lesser of an anxiety. But it feels to me at the moment there, I was just trying to escape from this email.
No, what you're doing is you're prioritizing your peacefulness. You're protecting your peacefulness. The Buddha calls it guarding the doorways to discontentedness, because the doorways are your eyes, ears, nose, tongue, the body, and your mind itself. That when you take in contact, in this case, you were seeing something with your eyes, you started noticing that agitation or frustration or whatever it was coming up, and you were like, nope, not going to do that. So you cut off the contact and now you delayed your looking at it. And if you need to delay it for a few minutes or a few hours or a few days, that's what you would like to do because you're prioritizing your peacefulness. You're guarding your mind. You're not allowing your mind to stay wired like that. So you're not escaping anything. You're just choosing, when do I address this? And I would like to address it with a calm mind, and I'm not allowing the mind to stay wired like this. So you're prioritizing your peacefulness, protecting your own contentedness. That's what you would like to be able to do because you're the one that's responsible for it. You're not escaping it. You're not avoiding it. You're just choosing selectively, when do I address this? And I would like to address it with a calm mind. Right now, my mind's not going to be calm, so I'm going to set that to the side until my mind's ready. Yep. And you'll be much more successful that way. And eventually you'll get to the point where you can look at every email and every voicemail and it doesn't affect you at all. But in the meantime, you're going to need to do this kind of stuff. But eventually you won't have to because your mind will just always be peaceful. Yep. All right. So I don't see anyone else or any other questions. Let me just check. Yeah. Okay. So there's one more thing to share with you guys on this topic. It's not part of the Brahma-viharas. It's not part of the 4 healthy mental states, but it's such an important mental quality to cultivate in the mind. I put it here in this chapter and I put it in this talk, and it's generosity. And I teach this in other courses and other programs because without generosity, you'll never get to enlightenment. You're going to need to practice giving and sharing. more than is strictly required in any given situation without any expectation of anything in return, such as your time, your effort, your energy, and your resources. What this is doing is this is antidoting your selfishness. There's a certain amount of selfishness when the mind has craving, desire, attachment. The mind's holding on. You might be holding on to your money, to your time, to your clothes, to your jewelry, any number of things your mind's holding on to. So what you're doing with generosity is you're giving and sharing, and it trains your mind to let go. And it's important that you do this frequently. With meditation, frequency is actually more important than duration. Right? If you had an option between one meditation for 30 minutes per day, or you had 2 meditations for 15 minutes, you'll have more benefit with 2 meditations for 15 minutes because your mind's being trained more frequently to let go. And your generosity is the same way. If it's a matter of amount or frequency, you would like to do frequency. So if you could spend 3 days once a year helping out at an orphanage, that's not as helpful as if you say went like an hour every week. That's going to be better to train your mind to let go. Or if it was a matter of donating $500 once a year or $1 a day, you would like to do $1 a day. That's going to actually train your mind to let go more frequently, and it's going to be more impactful to your mind. So this practice of generosity is another quality that you need to cultivate in order to get the mind to let go. When we were growing up as children, we were taught to share. We were taught to share our toys. Typically, that's the way we're taught. We're not taught why, but we're typically taught to share our toys and stuff like this. And we learn to share as children. But then as we get older, and we start putting our own blood and sweat and tears into what we're doing, we tend to become selfish, where we hold on to things very tightly and we're not interested to share with others. So you're going to need to transform that and get to the point where you realize giving and sharing with others is helping to enhance your mind. But you need to do it without any expectation of anything in return, not even a thank you. Now, most people will say thank you. A good majority of them will, but not everybody will. So you need to get to the point where you don't even have an expectation for a thank you from somebody. Because if you have an expectation for a thank you, because the universal truth of impermanence, not everyone's going to say thank you, and now you're going to be frustrated. And the mind isn't truly doing something just to enhance the quality of your mind. You're doing it because you want something back. You want a thank you. Right? So you would like to get to the point where you're just giving and sharing, recognizing this interconnectivity with all beings, that you don't have to get something every time you give something. We kind of think that if I spend 3 hours doing this, I want this in return. Or if I spend 3 days doing this, I want this in return. But this is just the opposite. This is I'm giving without any expectation of anything in return. And this is going to enhance the quality of your mind. And this is something you're going to need to actively participate in applying right effort to arise this in the mind. If you notice, if you go around Thailand, you might see a lot of donation boxes in different places. And this is where you can just put 10 baht or 20 baht. 10 baht, 20 baht, maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 times throughout your day, and just regularly practice that. That's going to train your mind to let go, let go, let go, let go, right? So you're going to need to cultivate this, because breathing mindfulness meditation and generosity is what's going to train your mind to let go and eliminate your cravings, desires, attachments. So any questions on generosity? You have a question? Yep. By the way, while you're getting your mic queued up, this is something that the Buddha said that is really impactful, that I tend to share when I teach about generosity. He says, monks, if beings knew, as I know, the results of giving and sharing, they would not eat without having given, nor would the stain of selfishness obsess them and take root in their minds. Even if it were their last bite, their last mouthful, they would not eat without having shared it, if there were someone to share it with. But because beings do not know, as I know, the results of giving and sharing, they eat without having given, and the stain of selfishness obsesses them and takes root in their minds. The results of giving and sharing that the Buddha knows that other people don't know is enlightenment. What he's basically saying is, if people knew that generosity leads to this peace and joy of the enlightened mental state, and they knew how peaceful and joyful the mind is, and it's generosity that leads to that, they would not eat without having shared it, if there was someone to share it with. But because beings do not know how peaceful and joyful the enlightened mental state is, and that it's generosity that leads to it, they eat without having shared it, right? That's what he's basically saying. So here in Asia, you know that we pretty much share our food. Like all the food goes in the middle and then we just all share it, right? Because if you live in a family that's impoverished, there might not be enough food for everybody, right? So all the food goes in the middle, and then you take 2 or 3 spoons and you put it on your plate, and then you eat that. And then you take 2 or 3 more spoons and then you eat that. So at the end of the meal, we might not all be full, but we've all had a little bit of food, and we've all shared it equally, and it's kind of gone down equally, right? So this is a good way to practice that. If you're from a Western country, we're kind of load up our plate and this is my food, right? But what you would like to do is you'd like to share with other people. Maybe take your friends out to lunch, or when you go out to lunch, you maybe order something and you share it with the people around you. Or say you get a bag of chips and you come back and your friends are there, you pass the bag of chips around and say, hey, would you like some chips? And if the bag comes back and there's only 1 chip left, just eat your 1 chip and then go get another bag, right? You can always go get another bag. So what the Buddha is teaching you is to share. And food is a big one that we tend to hoard because of our animal existences. Animals will tend to hoard food. And a lot of us came out of the animal realm, so we tend to hoard our food. So if you learn to share your food, this will help you live open-handedly, and it'll train your mind to let go. Okay, so you have a question?
My question is around what is the right level of generosity that we should practice?
Oh, this is a good question. All you guys' questions are great. So generosity is something you also have to practice from the middle way, right? If you practice it extensively, then this is going to leave you depleted, where you don't have the resources that you need. But if you never practice generosity, you're going to be quite selfish, right? So you got to find that middle, and then that middle is going to be constantly changing. Because let's just say now, say you're employed and you're making lots of money, and maybe you can give a certain amount of time, effort, energy, and resources in a certain way. But then say you become unemployed, or say you have children, perhaps. Say you have children, and then they go to college or university or what have you. You got to pay for that, right? So you're going to have to ebb and flow your generosity and figure out what is working for you in any given situation. So like when I was in business, I had a lot of money, so I was able to share that with a lot of people. But then when I started doing this, I don't have money anymore. So now I can share my time, right? So you're going to need to find that middle, that balance for yourself, and only you can figure that out. But when you're in the middle, you'll feel peaceful. You'll feel joyful. You'll have given and feel like you've given, but you'll be whole yourself. The Buddha actually gives details where he talks about these 4 groups of individuals that would be wise to practice generosity with, and he talks about making sure you're whole and your partner's whole. If you have children, your children are whole. Your employees, if you have employees, making sure those people are taken care of first. And then he talks about like the next group and the next group and the next group. And he puts himself as last. And he basically says, okay, if you still have additional resources at that point, you could share it with like monks and ascetics and people who are sharing the teachings and stuff like that. But if you're not whole and the people around you aren't whole, then you're not going to be able to continue to sustain your life. So he teaches you to be in the middle way, even with generosity. And only you're going to know what that is, because you know what your financial situation is, or your time or your effort or your energy. And that's what you would like to be able to do, is find that middle. And don't overextend yourself, but don't be selfish either, and find that middle. Your mind will be joyful and calm and peaceful when you find that middle with your generosity. Okay. Let's see if we have any questions anywhere else. All right, I don't see anything anywhere. Okay, so let me just share with you guys what we're going to be doing tomorrow. Tomorrow is a talk on true love, love without attachment. This is what you're going to really need to create harmonious relationships. This is where I'm going to help you to be able to see what you're currently thinking of as love may not actually be love, right? So I'm going to teach you what true love is and how to actually practice it. Then after that, I'm going to teach you how to practice in a world of the unknowing, relationships with non-practitioners, because you're going to be around people who aren't practicing the teachings, whether it's in your personal lives or in your professional life. You're going to have bosses who aren't treating you in a way that you know is wise to treat people, and how do you deal with those situations. So I'm going to be teaching you those kinds of things. And then in the afternoon, I'll be teaching you how to practice non-attachment, how to eliminate attachment to those who are closest to you. So this is like your life partner, your children, your parents, your brothers and sisters, people like this that you're really close to. I'm going to teach you how to eliminate those attachments to those people, but still have the relationship and still love them and still enjoy your time with them. In fact, when you have no attachment to them, you'll actually enjoy your time even more. You'll have a much more fulfilling relationship when you don't have an attachment to them. So this is what we're going to be doing tomorrow. Okay, so enjoy your evening, whatever you guys do, and perhaps I'll see you tomorrow. Okay, be well. Take care. Sawadee Krap.